Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Michelle Morris from Consolidated Planning Group. We are a special needs focused financial planning firm, and we love to produce these webinars to try to educate families and advocate for you, provide some helpful resources for you as you go along your journey with your child. So today we're going to be talking about something very important. We do get a lot of questions at Consolidated Planning Group about all aspects of life with an individual with needs. But today, this question is something we get a lot. How do I manage a child who has aggressive behavior, especially because of autism or things like that? So we have Dr. Tara Coker Devine and Dr. Neal Sarahan here with us today. They're going to be teaching us some great information. Before I do turn it over to them, I just have a few slides and I want to let you know, first of all, we do record all of the webinars that we do. We present live, we record them, and then we put them on our YouTube channel. So if you missed something and you wanted to go back and rewatch, or if you want to share this with friends or family, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. I've already put the link in the chat box, and there will be a link in the slides as well. Now, later on today, if you have pre-registered for this webinar, you're going to get an email with a link to the recording and all of the slides that we go through today. So there will be some helpful resources in there for you. All the links, as I mentioned, will be clickable when you get those slides later on today. Now, we should be here for about an hour today. We can't see or hear you, so feel free to have your lunch or your snacks. But please, if you have any questions or comments, we would love to make this more of a conversation. So feel free to put those in the chat box. Some people did send questions in ahead of time, and we will get to as many of those as we can. A little bit about Consolidated Planning Group. CPG is located just outside of Houston, Texas, and we've been doing this for over 30 years. We've been in business. We are specifically here to help serve the special needs community with financial planning services. We also help with estate planning, taxes, how to get those benefits, state and federal benefits, and even local resources. So, any questions you have about those types of items, you can reach out to me, and I am happy to help you with those things. We also offer a completely free initial consultation. If you would like to meet with me after this, that's no problem. So, we are members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We are chartered special needs consultants and nationally certified Social Security advisors. But most importantly, we are all parents to loved ones with needs at Consolidated Planning Group. So we know what it's like. We know what you're going through. We live and breathe this like many of you do. So families come to us really for comprehensive financial planning for their families, specifically things like lifetime care planning, transition planning topics, a future cost of care estimate, things like those state and federal benefits and local resources. And I'm glad you're here with us today because out of all the financial advisors in the United States, fewer than 200 financial planning firms out of about 263,000 um, do focus on special needs planning. So it's rare. I hear that I have a little bit of echo. I'm not sure why. If you're hearing an echo, I apologize for that. Few key tips for planning for your loved one before I turn everything over is think early, think ahead. While your child is in school, you might kind of be a little bit complacent. They're in school, they're doing fine, or they're in school and they're having issues, and we're dealing with those issues right now. Let's get through today. But you also have to think about the future. Think about what's going to happen after high school. There are great residential options, vocational options, educational options, but you have to go out and find them and learn about these programs early, tour the opportunities, and see what's a good fit for your family. Um, it's really hard for us. People will come to us and say, "Well, what's the best school for my family?" Well, everybody is unique, and that is a very specialized thing for your family. So you're going to have to get out there and do some legwork on finding the best options for your loved one. One other piece of advice, though, is to be very careful when you're thinking about who is going to take care of your loved one when you can't do it anymore. People often think a sibling is a great answer, right? But it's not always, because that can create friction on both sides of that relationship. So just think very carefully before you automatically assume that a sibling is going to be willing or able to care for your loved one. Okay, so with those things in mind, I'm going to turn it over to, do you prefer Dr. Devine and Dr. Sarahan, or Dr. Tara and Dr. Neal?
We're usually Dr. Tara and Dr. Neal to all our clients, so
Perfect.
either form.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing the information. I will let you take it over.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Our topic today is about aggressive behaviors, and I think that another way to say aggression is violence. And what we want to do is talk today about ways to wring the violence out of the system as much as possible. In the same way Michelle was saying, you got to do some pre-planning for the future. Um, you have to do some pre-planning on thinking about uh, aggressive behavior. And so we want to just give you a context for that today. Uh, Tara is going to talk about just some presumptions that you need to know about every person in life, and that includes those with autism. Sometimes they're excluded from these presumptions, but guess what these guys are trying to do? Guess what they're trying to do, Tara?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Neal. So, Dr. Neal and I have had some really great, rich, fruitful years of working together. And we recently, our last piece of work that we did together was a book that we've published, and we'll talk about that later. But you'll see, if you had an opportunity to read that it's based on something that we co-created, which is called the Integral Flow Growth Map. It's a developmental and relationship-based map, because just as Michelle has talked about the planning, Dr. Neal just alluded to, having to plan and think ahead, even about our daily interactions with our individuals that, would be, neurologically different individuals in our families. We thought about development as a journey. And this map, developmental map that we co-created, and by the way, this is one of about 32 uh, slide descriptions of the map. It's we don't want to bury you in that today, but to just give you the sort of fundamental baseline of how we came to think about this. You might say, well, these guys are developmental psychologists, so that's just how they would think. But we were actually trained in some very different ways to think about, aggressive behaviors or autism. And so in those years that we were working together, what we knew was that the outcomes of traditional interventions had something about somewhere between a 20 and 30% success rate. And because we lived amongst and in a therapeutic community that we developed, and worked with the individuals and the families in every system of their lives, we thought 20 to 30% positive outcomes wasn't good enough. And so we got willing to not know. And because the ways we were taught to know were obviously not producing. And so we got willing not to know with the individuals and with their families. And we can't thank them enough for trusting us in this experiment of not knowing. But it's a journey we went on together under the same roof for 10 years, Dr. Neal and I. So when we left the place where we were doing that work, and it was a really, really rewarding time, um, and to watch these lives transform. Um, and the families to get their lives back, as they often would say to us. Um, but when you're looking at this map, when we were thinking about, we left the place where we were working together and we became consultants traveling around the country doing the work. Well, we finally had time to eat lunch for the first time in 10 years. And so we started using those lunch times to say, hey, what is it we really learned? What is it they really taught us? What is it they really came to us and said, no, this is what we need and this is what works? What is that? What was that? And so we said it was a journey. When we thought about the sea of faces, the unique lives, it was a journey. And it was a developmental journey, and it was not terribly different than neurotypical person's journey. It was just at a different pace. It sometimes needed a different space and always needed a different rhythm of how for their development to move forward along the trajectory. And so we started to think about that intentionally. How could we um, how could we map this journey? And so if you are looking at the visual now, it is a parts to the whole, which is a thing that developmental psychologists do. It's always parts to the whole. And so there are 4 quadrants on this map that represent 4 parts of human development that we think are fundamentally uh, uh, critical to be intentional about. And if you look on the left side of the map, sort of the left hemisphere, if you will, the 2 quadrants are competence and independence. And this is what we call the I world, the capital I, for our learners and the families we're working with. And so that I represent what every human is born with is the driver to adapt to their environment, to, forward to, to their needs. Um, and so, that's a really important segment to think about. The second is the right hemisphere, if you're looking at the map, is the we side of the map. And that is what also all humans are born with, is a driver to attach. And you probably all have experienced it. Many people will assume we call them our learners. We do have individuals in our family systems with neurological differences, but in the individuals we work with, we call them our learners.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that a lot.
Many people would assume that they don't want to attach or they can't attach. And as we lived in community with them, we thought so differently about that. They taught us uh, that actually they had the same interest, but they had met, as you would see in our book, we talk about this between 0 and 6, they make the same number of attempts that as a neurotypical kid to attach and to develop relationship, but they meet with approximately 80% failure. And so this is a retreat into their I world rather than continue to make themselves vulnerable in the we world. So this is the way we think about optimal human development, some kind of balance of the I and the we, right? And the more intricate versions of this map, you'll see the dotted lines there. Those represent within each quadrant, there are 5 developmental constructs that live in here. And each of those 20 total constructs, there are 8 stages that they could be in. So you can see it gets intricate, but just for today's sake of today, you want to think about your own life and think about the life of your neurologically different individual. And I'll just say these sentences out loud. So in the I world and competence, I grow my skills and strengths to become a credible contributor. No matter what the cognitive functioning was of the learners we were working with, no matter what their physical ability was, no matter what their academic performance demonstrations might have been, they all demonstrated some driver toward being comforted by higher level of skill and strengths, because so that they, interestingly, in this I world, could also contribute and belong, right? Operating outside of that as just the person that always needs something is does not fill a tank, does not fill a human spirit tank, right? And it makes it pretty agitated to wake up in the morning and to think you will never be a contributor. And so we got really intentional and busy about trying to host that quadrant on the map with them. And then independence, I become the manager of my abilities and actions. Now, even if an individual or learner for a lifetime has some dependencies, it can still find quite a number of ways to be in the manager's seat of their lives. And I think the onus was on us and their families to help them to begin to discover that. What way?
Hey, Tara,
Yeah, uh-huh.
could I just, I'm imagining that a lot of the violence and aggression is um, on this I side of,
Mhm.
you know, I want to become the manager of my abilities, and maybe the adult is saying, "Well, man, I don't think you're doing a very good job of it," and there's this frustration that happens uh, over the
Absolutely.
over the issue of independence, and
Mhm.
then you look at competence and you say, "Well, I can do it," and I can do it, I can do it. And these are the sort of particular examples of places where conflict can happen.
Mhm.
Um, and so learning more about the fact that these guys are, this is what they really want to do.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
we can help them with that. And sometimes we can get in the way of that. And that's a conflict
Yeah,
situation.
there's a whole
Anyway, thanks,
section.
Tara.
Yeah, sure. There's a whole section in our book about the struggle as any kind of care guide. We considered ourselves care guides as directors in the program that we were in. We fought over functioning all the time, and they would usually let us know. Sometimes they were grateful uh, when they shouldn't have been, we were in the way, but many times we were operating as the glass ceiling by over functioning for them. So we've learned all of this in action rather than just academically drawing conclusions, but by living with them day in and day out. So on the we side, in the sentences, social purpose, we offer gifts and care for our world. So once again, thinking about if you're individual that you are the care guide for and with maybe others, gets up every day with no sense of purpose, only thinking about I'm the broken one that requires all the help. And you know people might make what I think are incorrect assumptions that that's the way they desire it. I would beg to differ in that we saw all of them uh, open up and bloom when they had the slightest sense of purpose come toward them. And so we get very intentional about helping them locate both what their strengths and stretches are in each of these quadrants. And so just to just those beginning embers of them imagining having something that they can give rather than always being the receiver was, have many, many scenes in my head, clips of when that would happen for each learner. And of course, belonging that we talked about, that assumption by the world that because people with neurological differences, and especially autism, that they have such struggle belonging, that often it's because they just can't or they won't. And we don't, uh, that seems really black and white and ridiculous to us. So we
Mm.
do know it's hard for them. We know that it's brain-based of why it's a struggle, and we took it as the onus on us to begin to host the intentional conditions in all five of the constructs that go in the belonging quadrant to help them live in authentic membership in a community. So
I
this
love that.
just gives you some idea about the foundations or fundamentally where our thinking drives from. And we
Well,
did.
and this is
Go
this
ahead.
is fascinating to me because, I couldn't say, well, yes, I'm frustrated today because I don't feel like you have anything to do, any sense of purpose. I mean, people don't generally think that way in everyday life, and let alone our loved ones. Could you imagine, having these feelings and not being able to express what is bothering you and not even knowing what it is deep down inside could be these core life needs,
Yeah,
Hmm.
and then
I
with
just,
kids with adults and kids with uh, neurological differences, also the gifts that they want to give us, um, maybe stereotypical, maybe not very usable in the world. Um, their interests um, might be such that they don't receive the, we don't receive the offer. We don't. We said, come on, can you cut it short?
Mhm.
Or all that their offers are not just their desire, but their difficulty in making them real, having purpose. So um, one of the things that might be helpful here, Tara and Michelle, is to switch to the next slide and to think
Hmm.
about this map. There are particular reasons that people with neurological differences run into more obstacles on their journey toward these four core goals, right? And the neuroscience tells us that people with neurological differences have larger amygdala than typically developing children. And now, we may all know that the amygdala is kind of the thermometer for mood and affect. It's the tripwire for fight and flight. And these guys are ultra sensitive with a larger amygdala to upset. And we're talking today about aggressive behavior. That's the fight part of the amygdala. Um, the other part is flight, and that's the depression. That's the separation. That's the isolation. And we're worried about each of those aspects as we're dealing with. Think about it as you're not dealing with your child. You're dealing with their enlarged amygdala. and
Yeah.
and if you could think about it that way, then you should presume that they're going to be overwhelmed. And the next slide, don't go to it yet, but the
Oh,
next slide is talking about the uh, the ways in which you could see that enlarged amygdala, what it means, what are
mhm.
the tripwires, and in that there is an adult role. We can either uh, light it on fire, we can resist it. Resistance creates heat. Um, or we can learn how to soothe the situation. And that's a helpful way for us um, to that's maybe the gift that we can talk about today is to some pre-planning. And let's switch to the slide now. um, and the and we entitled this one's "The Amygdala is on Fire." Why does it happen?
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
what what triggers? uh, um, I see Teresa Frenash is saying, I do agree with you using the term violence. Um, and, I
Well,
think,
then she said, I don't. So she sees violence as having an intent behind it to hurt someone. And that's not necessarily,
oh, I
I
see,
don't think,
because I read I read her comment as, I do agree with you
yeah,
using the
yeah.
terms, but I
Then
think
she
it
came
meant I
back and said,
don't.
I don't.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Great.
so
Well,
a little bit of pushback on that term
so
Yeah,
because
that
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
they
Mhm.
yeah.
don't
Well,
mean to.
Yeah, we're going to
let's
talk about that. Yeah.
let's think about that. And you can change the violent term to
Mhm.
aggressive behavior. You
Mhm,
can change the term to uh, um, conflict
Reactive. Hmm.
behavior. You could change the term to that, but on the right side are reasons to be curious about it. Okay.
mhm,
Now, uh, it can be about environmental overload. I just advise you to like look at this list and check off from your perspective, um, what are the things that might be causing these uh, these behaviors, right? We, violent is not an important part of this discussion, but the amygdala on fire is, and it can be environmental overload. Uh, we're thinking about uh, somebody, Brittany's son, who's grabbing her hair while she's in the car, and can that be that I can't process this visual information as fast as it's happening, or I can't process the what I'm seeing with also the radio on, or I can't see this. All of these ways. Can you imagine trying to coordinate yourself in motion, and that can be, or I'm trying to talk to you, I'm trying to
mhm,
communicate with you, and I don't really worry about the fact that you are driving. Um, and so these are these are all ways in which we're asking the brain to process and deal with information, deal with stimulus, um, and it can be really frustrating at the point in which you want to stop. I'm grabbing your hair because I want you to stop. I want this circle to go. There's another issue that we've encountered is that that there's an association of neurological difference sometimes with seizure behavior
Hmm.
mhm,
that shows itself in OCD behaviors, that shows itself in um, the in the seizure moment. You lose touch with the what's going on, and then when you wake up, it's it's a new world. Something's changed. Um, these are things that should be checked out. Frustration and inconsistency. One of the things that neurologically uh, different people get their bearings is by consistency. And so it's confusing in the mind. Uh, they don't have the flexibility of and so we get locked into uh, consistent patterns um, and confounds. And that
Mhm. I
leads
think of
us
it,
down to
Dr. Neal.
rigidity,
Yeah, I
cognitive
think of it
rigidity.
often, Dr.
Tara,
Neal,
yeah.
as on that frustration and inconsistency when internally you feel so sort of turbulent at times, like racing thoughts or, sensory reactions going on and off. That when things feel inconsistent internally, regulating your environment to be more consistent helps them, feel like
Right.
the boat's not going to turn over, right? If I can't get control of maybe what's inside here, but if I could, get this consistency regulated outside of me, which leads to, what we're saying, the aggression at times. That's how much they desire things to settle down.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Great.
Yeah.
Perspective blindness. I'm noticing that Carol is talking about the fact that she's can be in rhythm with her son, but the dad is not, right? Um, perspective blindness is um, the idea that w- that the 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 people want us to understand them. They really have a priority of us understanding them. Some of them guess that we should automatically understand them without them doing anything. And so uh, they are mind blind, right? They don't work as hard at understanding what our perspective is. And we get locked into this rational argument back and forth of, well, you don't understand me. Well, I don't understand you. Well, you don't understand me. Well, I don't understand you. And it's all a perspective thing. And the journey of, for neurologically different people is harder because they don't have all the communication, and it escalates into uh, aggressive. I'll aggressively communicate with you because you're too stupid to understand what I want or what I am trying to say. Um, that leads to uh, what I call a primitive I world, where uh, it is a struggle for the person to fulfill their competent and independent needs. That this is back to the map that the their ability to be independent self-regulators is primitive. And so we can't set goals for them that are expectations that are out there on the ideal frame when they don't have the basics and the the thing that's the primitive I world is takes us to the stages on our map is that a lot of times we want people to be operating in the collaborative mode, and they're just not there yet. They're they're just not there yet, or their ability to do that is um, it has to be practiced at specifically uh, simpler levels. And so when we do these lists of doesn't do this and doesn't do that and can't you understand that what would that be like? Uh, and they don't understand it. They don't understand the reciprocity of the world. Um, and so um, practicing at smaller levels rather than at the ideal is because if they can't attain the ideal, and that's what we are, can't you get along with your brother and sister? Um, then that in that can't, that's where the person begins to feel failure. If we're just registering failure because we're not practicing with a high degree of success, then we're going to get aggressive, defensive blowback. Is that I hope that makes some
Yeah,
sense.
that makes so much sense to me because, as the adult, and I love the term you use, to be their guide, to help them, to help. And sometimes, we have to kind of clear out the path for them on the journey. And this goes to show that, if we don't clear the path for them, especially, if they're getting those negative results when they try to do it themselves, of course that's going to be frustrating to them. I mean, I would feel the same way, but you're right in the primitive I world. That's amazing to me. I almost feel like every parent should listen to your talk and take this to heart with our kiddos as they're growing and developing, whether they have neurological differences or not. Some of this stuff happens. I always hear, I used to be a teacher, and I would hear about students coming home and just collapsing. And it's because they've had to hold it together all day long and all of that overstimulation. And then they get home and you're their safe space where they can fall apart. So it's kind of part of that. And the last one here overall is fear, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's an overarching emotion that they're experiencing.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so if we can reframe from the in conflict in I I say violence because violence is a disruption of the relationship. It's a tear, it's a wound, and if we can if we can frame what's happening or what's going to happen as fear based, and we can say back to the person, I I I I'm I'm seeing your fear, or uh, I'm seeing your frustration. You're communicating to me
Mhm.
your fear and your frustration. Um,
A lot of people have been asking today about, self-harm and about how to get ahead of this stuff and what to do. And, they're not all tiny anymore. You can't just grab onto your little one when they're 18 and bigger and stronger than you are. What are some ways that we can kind of watch out for these things? Do you have any tips, or are we going to, maybe we're going to get to that?
well, I think we can get to it right now in terms of this list here. Uh, is assume that these things are going to happen, and then help the person label what it is. So I mean, self harm is communication, intolerance with the self. Oh, you idiot! I can't stand how incompetent I am. Um, and so, so you begin to look at, well, what can we simplify in the environment? How can I become more consistent? Um, is this a case that after, after the frustration that we could say, this is kind of black and white thinking, but really your idea is that there are times that you can become more flexible and you can you one of the things that we started was called a 4C plan that you start out calm and then you get kind of conflicted and then you get really chaotic and then you get catastrophizing. Um, and if you could teach and pre-practice the idea of, well, by the time you get to self-harm, you've missed two or three strategies that you could have, that you could grow, that would be um, that would be better communications and a better assessment of yourself, um, and so that our assumption is that people really don't want to smack themselves. They don't want to cut on themselves. But that's a
Yeah.
way of communicating the pain and the frustration that's there. And that, I think evidence shows pretty clearly clinically that that's what self-harm is about. But it's an unacceptance of of the human condition that we're not all perfect.
Yeah, so that's languaging and labeling is what's the instrument that's in the 4C plan. And practicing, I mean, don't even wait for those kinds of things to start happening, but we actually, would have the learner list, hey, well, what do I look like when I'm calm? How do I act when I'm calm? What kinds of things am I usually doing when I'm calm? Well, then if the next level is challenge, like how do I look when I'm challenged? Kinds of things do I say when I'm challenged? How are other people experiencing me when I'm challenged? Well, what are some strategies I could do to get back to calm? You see what I mean? So this 4C, the C's that Dr. Neal listed, they're like a thermometer, going up in temperature. And so the idea is to language and label that with the learner, but long before they get into the middle of these kinds of things, right? And to develop a way for them to talk to their own brain about what's going on. I mean, we have another instrument we use called the growth opportunity wheel, and that's how we design the intentional conditions for our learners to expand and grow and develop. And so there's actually a way that we, do that, a pattern, an approach of how we design those. The very first dot on the wheel that you're going to go around on the growth opportunity wheel is languaging. They need a language to speak to their own brain about what's going on. Don't assume that they do. And so,
Yeah.
first thing we would do, and we worked mostly with kids and learners in small groups, because they learn so much from each other and then they're not so isolated. So almost all of our work, this work we did was in groups, small groups. And so, yeah, so the first, straight out of the chute, it's just languaging, learning how to talk to your brain about what's happening, and then a ton of modeling. Who are other people this happens to? How do they manage it? What do I watch? Well, I would, when I was designing that or running some of the groups, I would even, because, a lot of them had really favorite TV shows that they obsessed about. They had all the lines memorized. And I was like, well, let's go to that character. Let's find the time that he came unraveled over this or that. What did it look like? Why did he do that? So that going on that discovery work, and I understand that you're talking about your learners have different cognitive levels and abilities, but we would design those based in a way that fit, for the learner. So yeah, it's a really critical piece, and it's just in that is a common, CBT, cognitive behavioral strategy with neurotypical people, right? Labeling what's going on before it gets on top of your head and squashes you, what it does is it puts you in the manager's seat of something. If you can begin to claim it and then once you can name it, then knowing after learning what are some things I could do, what are my alternatives to what I feel like doing, which goes back to the self-mutilating or self-harm. This how I feel is real. I'm not making it up. This is the name of it. this is how I'm learning that I'm coming to it, and I'm going to see if one of those alternatives might work for me, right now. So, so it's a good example because it's extreme, and it's also an example that scares us. You know, it's one thing, if they, throw something and it breaks my favorite vase in the house or whatever. When they start hurting themselves, it's very alarming and scary for them and for the care guides. But putting them, so then often we start thinking we have to be the regulators of that. Well, we do need to rise up and watch more carefully, but also let's help them get back in the manager's seat or something that feels out of control for them. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Hmm.
There's a comment about her son getting frustrated and hitting himself or biting or kicking. And if he can't do what he wants to do the way he wants to do it, then he has a meltdown. So that would be that rigidity, right? Just thinking about how to maybe give some choices or help them understand why this has to be the way. What would you do in a situation or a learner like that?
Yeah, this is, sometimes aggressive behavior is I want what I want,
Hmm.
and I want it now. And one of the things that is really interesting is like you can look about it and say, well, one of the ways is to get the get things on a schedule, um, and to say that the conflict is going to happen when the person is saying I want, and
Hmm.
uh, and the parent or the whoever it is, the teacher is kind of the obstacle that's not getting the person what they want, and and the uh, the thing that we try to work out with the person is it's not a question of yes or no. It's really a question of when.
Yes.
And if it becomes a possibility of saying yes when, then the person sees a pathway to getting what it is they want. It becomes a negotiation. It becomes a relationship based. Um, yes, we can do this when your room gets cleaned up. That's a good argument. Um,
Yeah.
yes, we can do this when the schedule, which is working in your favor, if you can sequence the schedule that gets the person what it is they want, and you could simplify the environment, you know, taking the person to the grocery store, um, when they know where the chocolates are stored is um, is a really tough issue. And so
Hmm.
maybe maybe don't do that. This I want can become obsessive. It could become insistent. Um, and communicating to the person that you know what it is they want. And I will be the care guide for helping you get what you want. You can trust me. Um, I am not the obstacle. Um, and I think that's so important to change it from a yes no, uh, or the I want, you don't understand what I want. It is really important, um, to avoid the obsessive inability to sequence when. when this could happen.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm wondering if some of our next slides and discussion points can support that,
yeah,
Dr. Neal. And just as a refresh too, and connected to the point about um, when we are looking at the map again, it's of importance to note that the closer to the center of the map, the more primitive the developmental skill is. And as you move out, of course, it becomes more expanded. Um, and as Dr. Neal was referring to, so often we're asking for, like, you know, um, circle number 3 or 4, and they do not have yet the skill or the cognitively to think about or process or definitely maybe even to do it. Some of them can identify it, but don't have the practice at it to have developed the skill. And so this is really critical about these frustration points that often set off. Sometimes it's about yes and no, or I want. Other times it's about skill. It's about skill deficit, and we are asking for an emotional regulation or a behavioral regulation level of a number 3 stage circle when they haven't practiced it at number 1. Is that you follow
yeah,
the simplicity of that?
Yes.
So
Yes.
we have no judgment, and our learners will be at, in different developmental constructs on the map. They'll be at all kinds of different levels, but it's up to us and them to go on a journey together to discover what that is. And then we don't care where they are. Then the job for us is just go there, not keep standing
Yes.
here
Meet
on
them where they are.
circle 3 and screaming, get out of here, get out here with us, get more regulated, knock this stuff off. When are you gonna, pull it together? We're just waiting. But we so intentionally go to where they are and begin practicing right there. I don't care if they're 15 and the
Mhm.
developmental skill at that level, at social, intelligence is at 8. That's where I'm going because that's the one that's hanging them up. So anyway, just wanted a quick refresher there, but you can move along there, Michelle, on the
There
slide.
we go.
So we were talking about, Dr. Neal and I will join together on this, and this is what he was suggesting about. We're not anti behavioral, or it is just by itself is simply we feel like, and we learned that it leaves them and us sort of dancing in the same place all the time.
Mhm.
We just managed for the moment or the small period of time. And it can work in the moment. We have seen, especially a few people have asked questions about kids biting themselves or hitting their heads on the wall. I mean, I think that's where yes, you're right in this moment, that is what I need to have stop. And you need to have stop because we're about to go to a whole nother level of 911 here. So it has a purpose, but in and of itself, it worries us. And what we have watched is it won't move. It usually will not move our learners forward. So it can stop meltdowns, if there's, reduce movement, if there's a lot of, chaotic running around and the wrong times. And, especially like in classrooms in school, we're thinking about, why does he keep running around the room? Why does she keep only wanting to uh, willing to sit in this one corner, or it increases compliance. I mean, that's helpful, right? It's not like it's not helpful at all. It can teach, tolerance. Like if you'll wait long enough, for that, then you'll get the reward, or, so I mean, it's not like nothing is learned there. In the control of an environment. I mean, sometimes is it our need of control of the environment, or is it their need of controlling the environment? Sort of like, these both are at play, right? And we're not making judgment of other people. we spent lots of time asking ourselves these questions, right? Is this going to be more helpful to me? Or if I could slow down and walk this through in a different way, is that what's going to be more helpful both to the learner and to us in the long run, right? But I know what would be more helpful in my environment right this minute, right? So sometimes that's what we need. But if we could begin to think about this amygdala idea, that if indeed there's something that is dysregulated long before you saw the behavior, then is it not helpful to think about going to the root? It takes more time, sometimes it takes more patience. Often it takes more patience. Um, we're tired. We want to stop and say maybe no one understands like you do what it's like to live parenting a child with neurological differences, especially if aggressive behaviors are involved. No one can understand it. It's really taxing on them, but especially on you and everybody around them. So we don't want to ever sound like we're minimizing that. We get it. But we have just tried to be as creative and curious as we can possibly be about ways to help you get to the root of it, right? Rather than just entrapping things in the moment to stop, right? So what does sensory support do? What are we actually doing when we can try to, co-regulate, right? If they're escalating, well, you know what we are inclined to do? We start, tit for tat, escalating with them. And it's tough not to do sometimes. But if we can think about co-regulation of like, I'm not going to journey up that way with them. I'm going to stay right here and I'm going to keep trying to be here. Because as we know about mirror neurons and lots of other neuroscience, that it is a powerful thing to stay regulated when the other person is dysregulated. Um, because it begins to help them. I mean, if they could get regulated on their own, I really think they would. I mean, have you ever, I mean, I know sometimes people look at the neurologically different individuals and say, well, they just do that, just do that, just get control of the environment. Well, yeah, probably, but why, right?
Mhm.
Got to stay curious. And we had this thing we say to ourselves every day with 150 learners in a building. Get curious before you get furious.
Ooh,
And,
I love that. I love
and
that. Get
because,
curious before you get
yeah,
furious.
yeah.
I would
So,
like to just make sure that we have enough time to get your
yeah,
contact information,
sure.
talk a little bit about your book. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I want
Sure.
to kind of, how can people get in touch with you, get your book, all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So our book is on Amazon, both the paperback and the ebook. And so if you just go to, Amazon and Google the title, No Longer Stuck, Frozen, or Lost, it'll pop up. And you can get it in a couple of days. And you can get the ebook, of course, right away. And
Perfect.
so, yeah. So what we want to say about the book is it's an expansion of everything we've talked about with a lot more obvious details and a lot of um, really, I think this authentic history telling about ourselves is while we were trying to figure it out in a way
Hmm.
that our learners and the families were saying what was helpful and what really wasn't. And it is probably, would you say, Dr. Neal, 80% about real lives and it tracks those real lives all through the book from early chapters to end.
Yeah, from chaos
Hmm.
to calm.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's where we want to go.
Yeah. And from
And
panic
it is
to
possible.
purpose, right? Yeah. From
From
panic to
panic to
purpose.
purpose, from
Yeah.
chaos to calm.
Hmm.
Um, if
Yeah.
we have questions, and I really hope that this is true, that you could send some of your questions are really about life care questions, and Michelle, I think, is ready to answer those procedurally, Social Security and liability
Yes.
and any kind of the legal care, what do they call it? The fiduciary responsibilities of parenthood,
Yes.
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Then in the action part about it, we would delight in getting your questions and answer them in the particular more mindfully. Thank you.
Yeah, we have an Instagram
That's
where we post, a lot of these sort of just quick, ideas and ways of knowing and being and growing. It's Neural Development Center GH, the Neural Development Center of Greater Houston, which is the action place where we do the work. There's the individual work with the individual, the neurodevelopment expansion work, but also the family therapy work of how the family's being impacted. But one of the most helpful things in the way that I hear you asking your questions today is the parent coaching. We have a specialized parent coach just in neurodevelopment and autism.
Oh,
So,
that's
yeah,
fantastic. So there's a lot of ways that you can help families figure out, what are those triggers for my specific situation, for my loved one, and
absolutely.
how can I help, clear that path and make things easier for them. That would certainly lower the levels of frustration and anger and kind of put an end to this not a complete end. I mean, nobody's perfect, right? But help
Mm.
lessen these symptoms. So yes, definitely please reach out to Dr. Tara and Dr. Neal. Thank you guys so much for being here with us today.
Yeah,
We are
thank
going to send out this email with the slides, a recording, the link to the recording, but feel free to reach out to them, reach out to CPG for your financial questions. And we are genuinely here to help you. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us today, sharing your lunchtime, especially you doctors. And have a great week.
you. Yeah, thank
Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
you. Yeah, thanks for
Thanks
sharing
so much.
Goodbye.
so long. Bye-bye.
Appreciate
Mhm.